Most people remember that Kojima fell out with his previous company Konami during pre-production work on what would have been his entry to the Silent Hill series, Silent Hills. But this video will go over all the myriad ways that despite the cancellation, Silent Hill's DNA arguably wound up in 2019's Death Stranding. 1. Sound-based detection. In classic Silent Hill games, we all probably know that you use a radio to detect monsters. It also used to be that you could often avoid enemies by staying quiet and moving slowly in the dark. Well, this essential design conceit seems to have directly influenced the Odra deck and BT evasion mechanics in Death Stranding. The Odra deck gets louder the closer you get to BTs, and staying quiet by holding your breath is usually the only surefire method of avoiding the enemy. Which brings me to 2. Environmental conflict. A big challenge in the old Silent Hill games, surprisingly, was just getting around. Players got used to adapting on the fly to surprise detours and difficult terrain, because in Silent Hill even the environment and controls could work against you. Silent Hill 3 in particular, for example, was full of instant death pitfalls if you weren't careful. Death Stranding may have ditched Silent Hill's claustrophobic treks indoors through giant dilapidated OSHA violations, but some of how Sam relates to his crumbling environments in Death Stranding reminds me a lot of hunting Silent Hill for keys, health, and ammo. 3. Surrealism. You could say both Silent Hill and Death Stranding feel at times like tripping on bad hallucinogenic drugs. Whether it's the ghost babies from the school in Silent Hill 1, the walking phallic symbol pyramid head in Silent Hill 2, whatever the hell this is from Silent Hill 3, or the 50-foot woman in Death Stranding, these games are each loaded with David Lynch-esque surrealism, becoming something approaching what in cinema has been christened arthouse. Both Silent Hill and Death Stranding prioritize their own respective unique aesthetic over conforming to what's surely got the broadest mass appeal. Likewise, both Silent Hill and Death Stranding keep fans coming back because what these games depict, all too often, simply defies easy or sometimes any whatsoever rational explanation. These dreamlike stories require a suspension of disbelief beyond your average Marvel movie, if simply because you will spend most of your playtime not entirely sure what's going on screen. But if you open your mind to them, Silent Hill and Death Stranding in different respects offer a unique kind of art house video game experience that arguably really defines and epitomizes what this medium is capable of. 4. Child-parent motifs and the theme of birth and rebirth. One thing Silent Hill and MGS games, of course, passed down to Death Stranding would have to be the centrality of child-parent relationships and childbirth as a major theme. All of the first 3 Silent Hill games involve in some form or another a family dynamic at their core, whether that's Harry Mason and Cheryl in Silent Hill 1, James and the woman who was going to bear him a child, Mary, in Silent Hill 2, or Heather and her family, whose identities I won't spoil, from Silent Hill 3. The same dynamic lies at the heart of Death Stranding, a game about bonds of all kinds, a game about the bond between parents and children. A game where surreal, quasi-birthing scenes and umbilical cords abound. 5. The theme of ghosts and the use of ghost babies or children. Silent Hill and Death Stranding are both haunted works of modern Gothic art, just in different ways. Silent Hill is obviously a survival horror series, whereas Death Stranding is of a new genre entirely, so I don't want to overemphasize the similarities too much. But that being said, it feels like a full-blown homage by Death Stranding to Silent Hill, given how much horror mileage both titles managed to make together out of ghosts and, yes, even more specifically, ghost babies. It's here where the legacy of PT and Silent Hills, the game that never got to be born, haunts Death Stranding in its own weird way, including with even a special cameo by PT's Lisa herself. All of these titles, whether we're talking about Death Stranding or Silent Hill, these games are ghost stories, first and foremost. 6. Mostly monster, not character, boss battles. Boss fights in Silent Hill and Death Stranding alike are more often than not against not humanoid MGS-style bad guys, but more against wild forces of nightmare fuel. In both games, boss fights can come on unexpectedly and play out rather brutally as slogging wars of attrition. The human characters that we do fight, on the other hand, tend to appear and reappear multiple times throughout the game as important characters to the story. 7. Trauma, guilt, regret, grief, and family abuse. Both Silent Hill and Death Stranding weave imaginative worlds out from the raw fabric of human trauma. Both delve into complex human relationships across generations, often ones beset by loss and pain, and parent to child to grandchild traumatic abuse. Both fundamentally explore the bonds formed by people and follow as these bonds grow from the level of the personal to that of the communal. Both follow central characters searching for redemption in fallen, depopulated, tainted worlds. These characters are haunted by their own pasts that often set into motion their futures, which neither they nor the player see or hear coming. 8. Combing through the ruins of small American towns. If you think about traversing the town of Silent Hill itself in the first 3 Silent Hill games, it's awfully similar to Death Stranding's overriding sense of spacious vastness and digging through ghost towns in the middle of a deep American nowhere. These games humble you in their loneliness, by their loneliness, and with their loneliness. They are both sometimes at their most profound when, strictly speaking, not much is really happening that you directly understand. It is in their lonely character that a lyrical ode to a lost America takes shape. And that emptiness really defines, in some strangely familiar way, both the Silent Hill series and Death Stranding, unlike any other games. 9. Witches and America's Puritan Dark Age. Death Stranding and Silent Hill seem equally enamored with America's little-remembered origin as a 17th century theocracy, a time when belief in witches and demons and hallucinations prevailed as literal fact. Death Stranding drips with trippy, gothic romanticism no less so than its forefather series, Silent Hill, and of course, Metal Gear Solid. But whereas Metal Gear only rarely got truly David Lynch, Silent Hill was a true masterpiece of a horror series largely on the basis of how well it leveraged its David Lynch Americana with the occult, how much it used its small American resort town backdrop to explore the roots of the American psyche, a psyche originating specifically as a byproduct of the age of so-called sinners in the hands of an angry god. Witches and magic circles, in particular, show up prominently in both Silent Hill and Death Stranding, to say the least. There are mysterious, dark forces at work in these games. And that, of course, brings us to 10. Mysterious and or supernatural, dramatic rain and fog. It's self-explanatory, right? 11. Game time largely spent traversing an empty, hostile world. No game has as hostile an environment, arguably, as Death Stranding. To be sure, conflict against your wild, unpredictable, and dynamic surroundings defines the core gameplay loop of Death Stranding in ways that no other game can really compare to. But in its own, much more limited and survival horror-y way, Silent Hill was also a game series where the game world itself had to be thoughtfully traversed. It could betray you, where you ducked in and out of your map screen as you went, where sound cues, as we've already talked about, gave you a sense of the enemy's position, where just going forward itself often became the puzzle, whether up a rusty ladder or over a darkened bridge or down a bloody maze. 12. Unique, idiosyncratic mechanics and controls. Playing old-school Silent Hill is admittedly similar to the same era's run of Resident Evil titles. With that being said, there are little unique features to Silent Hill's controls and camera system, things that really set the game apart as something you can only really broadly and imprecisely compare to anything else. Many of Silent Hill's best puzzles follow a kind of down-the-rabbit-hole dream logic Resident Evil would never dare. Its radio, flashlight, and weird player-controlled third-person camera mode each offer something unique and iconic, even if by today's standards perhaps slightly dated. Death Stranding 2 takes elements from other games, but does it in its own strange way, so you don't even realize necessarily how much that it's building on other previous open-world sandbox titles like Grand Theft Auto or MGS5. It's that daring and unusual blend of the strange and familiar that Death Stranding and Silent Hill share maybe the most clearly. 13. Emotive use of music and empathetic storytelling, despite the dark worlds. Silent Hill and Death Stranding are both musical games in ways that helps bridge video games as an artistic medium not only with movies, but also with musical albums. Both feature a unified, cohesive signature sound, created by the same or similar artists throughout the entire game. This gives both games a sense of firing on all artistic cylinders, from ludonarrative to lyrical, and allows for poignant moments even without the need for any words at all. And when there are words, despite their nightmarish worlds, Silent Hill and Death Stranding both use a notably empathetic, humanistic writing style that shows us beauty in the ugliness. Both games depict a haunted, complex cast of characters who ultimately are revealed as emotional beings, human beings, in other words, with emotional cores. What would, say, Silent Hill 2 be without the love between James and Mary? What would Death Stranding be, despite its William Blake-level brand of psychedelic horror, without the deeply human bond between Sam and Bibi at its core? I'd say in this respect, Death Stranding learned quite a lot from Silent Hill's example. Now, the next two, 14 and 15, are going to go into some spoilers. So if you haven't played Silent Hill 1 through 3 and Death Stranding, pretty much to the end, you may want to skip this. Okay, 14, Scary Women. Without spoiling anything too bad, I'll also point out both Death Stranding and Silent Hill put you in surreal and unusual combat situations and cutscenes with not only ghost babies and fetuses, but also women who are supposed to be either your mother or your sister or your wife. I think unconventional enemies and boss encounters like these are part of how Death Stranding and Silent Hill alike seek to push the envelope of gaming and feature scenarios and characters we haven't already seen before over and over again. Say what you will about the weirdest moments from these games, you certainly can't call them boring or unoriginal. They both seek in separate ways to keep moving the medium forward. Silent Hill's relevance as a series started to stagnate with Silent Hill 4: The Room until, of course, Hideo Kojima's PT brought it as a global phenomenon back to life. And finally, 15, some spoilery connections. Just as a quick list, just off the top of my head, Heather pukes up a stillborn god at the end of Silent Hill 3, while Sam pukes and takes us into his gastrointestinal tract to see a baby inside of him every time he dies. Both games depict something like God or the devil as a blonde woman in a red dress. Any fan of Death Stranding would recognize on sight this memorable scene from Silent Hill 3 where we see bloody or muddy footprints of phantoms appearing in real time before our very eyes. And without terribly spoiling either game, I'll also point out that in Silent Hill 1 through 3, like in Death Stranding, we have souls or identities of single characters that get split into 2 or even 3 distinct other selves, which sometimes bizarrely even diverge from each other in terms of age or appearance. Clearly, the connections binding together Silent Hill and Death Stranding are many as they are profound. Hideo Kojima never got to make the full-length Silent Hill title of his dreams. But clearly, Death Stranding is his next best option, and as players, our next best thing. Well, that does it for this video. Did I miss any connections between the two games? Do you disagree that they're even all that similar? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, boss.